Okay, and we are live, hopefully. I don't really understand how this works exactly. Like, when does it actually go live? I think it's live now. So hi, everybody. Sorry that we're a couple minutes late. The Costa Rica was just slammed, in their words. So we're, a little bit late. But happy to be here for this second Remix meetup here in Utah. And we've got two awesome talks for you today. The one thing that I want to say, I guess I should share my screen because I want to show something. It's typically what you do when you want to show something. So we've got, should have kept this up. We have the meetup, and for those of you watching online in places outside of Utah, we do have other meetups. There's an online meetup in India that should be like more time zone friendly for you. And there's a meetup in Mexico. I'm working with somebody to set up a meetup in London and like all over the place. And if you want to set up a meetup, then I can help you get that set up too. So please do check out meetups in your area or organize your own. So I just wanted to mention that we do have February's meetup scheduled. We're going to be here again, and it's going to be awesome. The food's going to be here on time, hopefully. And we have a talk scheduled, and I could speak about Remix forever and like speak at every single meetup. But I think it's more interesting if you all talk about what you are actually doing with Remix. So please do submit to speak because I think it'd be awesome.
So we already have one talk?
Yes, we do.
I'm going to give a talk next month.
All right. So you're all off the hook unless Ryan bails on us. No, just kidding.
I'm gonna show off the planner app.
Oh yeah, that'll be awesome. So make sure you come and bring your friends because I got way more food than we have people. Yeah, that'll be sweet. Actually, the planner app is pretty awesome. Look, this is where like just today somebody tweeted saying that Remix is for websites, not web apps, and I was like, nope. That is not true, and I can't wait for Ryan to finish the planner app so we can really show people that. We actually do have an example in the repo of a product management or project management app, similar to Basecamp in some sort of like small way. And so like Remix is for apps and websites, anything you build on the web, you can use Remix and it will make that thing better. So anyway, please do fill out this form, and if it's not next month, then it can be a following month because it's more interesting if y'all are participating in that. But for today, we've got Noah Johnson over here who, let's see, where is that? Who built a really cool app that he's going to demo for us. And then I'm going to give a talk about the power of forms and how forms are amazing all on their own and how Remix makes them even better. So yeah, that's it. Noah, why don't you come on up and I'll give this to you. Also, this is Noah's first meetup. He's never been to a meetup before. So also never spoken at a meetup before. So he's going to do great and you're all going to say thank you when he's done.
Awesome, glad to be here. Get this shared. Okay, perfect. So I'm Noah Johnson. Ken asked me a couple days ago to come and kind of show off what I've been doing with Remix. And so this is about building an ugly sweater photo booth with Remix and some other cool stuff. Some other cool tools that we were able to integrate with this. A little bit about me, I'm from here in Utah. Currently, I'm doing the Masters of Information System Management program at BYU. And so I have just about a year left in that. I've always been passionate about technology, websites, web technologies. I would do that kind of through high school, simple landing pages and stuff like that. And when I started college, I went into more full stack web applications. And it's been great to kind of learn over the past few years. and grow as a developer. A couple of years ago, I think my proudest moment was the fact that my now wife asked me to build. She was part of a community program that she was doing, and she wanted to build out a website to be able to track what everyone was doing. It was Harry Potter themed. At that point, I hadn't had a ton of experience with web apps, but I said, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And so I kind of just dove into the deep end there. And it was right after that she started dating me. So web development is for more than just money. You can get quite a bit out of it. So really enjoy it. So kind of that leads into Remix. I met Kent at the Utah JS conference, just close by here, and learned a little bit more about Remix. I had heard a little bit about it in the past, but hadn't dived into it before. When it went open source, Kent actually came and spoke at BYU to a group that I'm a part of there, and talked a little bit about Remix, and I was super excited about it. And it was the next Monday that it went live, open source. And so I was thinking, okay, what am I going to build with it? And it perfectly coincided with an activity that we were planning as a student organization down at BYU. Oh yeah, and then the other cool stuff besides Remix, Tailwind, Cloudinary, SendGrid, and Prisma were some of the other tools and services that I use to build this. So I'm going to show first. Our idea was that we were going to have this big closing Christmas social where a bunch of students were going to come together. We were doing a gingerbread making contest and all of this. And the idea was to do a ugly sweater contest. I thought, it would be fun to have a website for this. And so for a way to have everyone vote and be a part of it, and also for people to be able to take pictures and have a great time. So this was the photo booth that we did. The camera was an unexpected, just like last minute thing, and the lights. And so it came together really nicely. And then after, and I'll kind of demo this a little bit, after the photos were uploaded, we put QR codes all around and people could go around and scan them and vote for their favorite ugly sweater that we announced at the end of the night. So to show off a little bit of the website that we made, it was very simple over the course of a couple of days. It was actually after doing the Jokes app that Kent did for kind of the tutorial to start off. I did that and adapted quite a bit from that in order to do this. And so we had a way of being able to show different images, and then also to be able to go through and say, yeah, I like that ugly sweater, and to be able to vote for it. And then it randomizes it after every vote as well. So then you wouldn't get totally, you wouldn't look at the same thing over and over again. Same thing here. So then everyone could enjoy the event as they were there and after. The photo booth aspect of it just uses basically just the webcam. And then it used for the big setup that we did, we just had a Canon webcam utility. And so you just plugged it in and selected that as the camera. And so we had the camera and the light set up and everything. And so in here, you're able to say, hey, there we go. And when it submitted the photo, then that's where, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, Cloudinary came in, and also with the borders, which was great. And so you were able to submit, and say, yeah, I want to show it here, and yeah, I want to be part of the ugly sweater contest. And then after that, and I'll show an example email, then it would send you an email with your photo saying, hey, thanks for coming. Remember to vote for the ugly sweater contest. And then you could go through and vote for the ugly sweaters. So that was the basis of what we were going for with the activity. And then I was just having a ball kind of learning Remix and having this be a first test application to do all that. So some of the elements that came in, Cloudinary was awesome. So if you don't know Cloudinary, it's an image, kind of image storage and delivery system. And so I was able to use Cloudinary's API to be able to upload the image, and then it would store just the original image. And after, we would also just store a transparent PNG. And then you could just basically take the base URL and add to that to say, I want this border on it, and I want it to scale. I want the width to be this much. And then I want to take of all the images that we have in the database, just go through each of them and display them with this border. And Cloudinary would also do the caching. So the first time, the reason that it shows on the submit form is because after that time, that was the longest load. And then after it just caches that version, which made it really fast. And then when you go back home, you already have that. And it would use that same URL when sending the image. So it was pretty straightforward to be able to implement that. Cloudinary has a great upload functionality. Oh yeah, for sure. Wrong one. Go. So it was so within the form, which I know Ken's going to talk about after, so you would take the image after you said, yeah, that's the image that I want, then it would use the image upload API. I think the biggest thing was you have to create a key in order to upload. And so it was great to start working with the backend and just having a route that you could just call and using a loader function here to generate a key. It brings it back, it uploads it to Cloudinary, and then stores the URL and the public ID within a database along with the vote count, which was just initialized to 0. So it was really easy to get up and going. Easy being kind of relative when you're like trying to figure out a new API and everything. But yeah, Cloudinary was awesome, especially for the borders, because then we could just change the border if we wanted to. So the day out, we had a new image that we wanted to put in there, and we didn't have to scrap all of the old images, and everyone could get the original and the one with the border to remember the event. The next piece was also being able to send an email after. And this was put together just right before the event. And again, this was really easy with SendGrid and also with Remix. So within, I can even just show this, all you would have to do, I have it here, is this line right here of just sending an email and passing in the image ID and the person's email. And then you have a server file that had this function to send the email, and it would just pull in that same Cloudinary image ID since it was there with the border, create a message that was pretty simplistic for this, but it's what happens when you work on the clock on a test project here. And then it would send the message, and lo and behold, here you would get an email with the image from Cloudinary saying, hey, thanks for coming, and go vote for the Ugly Christmas sweater contest. And so how the voting worked was I implemented a lot of, I didn't want to roll a whole auth system, even though that would be pretty easy with Remix to do, just for the sake of, this is an event that we know people are going to, they can just scan a code, but we didn't want them to be voting for more people or just being able to put in a different name when they were voting. And so everything was actually stored within a cookie session where it would set the number of votes and what images they voted for. It was a pretty kind of simple solution, taking what was done before to go in, and then it would just pass that to the front and then authenticate it on the back with that session cookie so that they could then vote. And as they voted, then it would reduce the amount of votes until they had no votes left. And so that was kind of an easy way to get it up and going for that voting functionality. And kind of, I think it solidified what was being taught with the Jokes app and with the foundations of being able to use the browser and use, for me, it really solidified what was going on with the authentication and passing a cookie back and forth between the server and the client. For deployment, Fly.io was great. It was super easy to just get it up there and have everything enabled for the event. And it was really fast, and it was great timing. So I think my biggest takeaways on this, and these are mainly Remix takeaways, I think it's amazing the developer ecosystem that's out there with Cloudinary and SendGrid, and I'd even go into using Prisma as the ORM to interface with the database. But I think it's amazing how much Remix works with these other tools with minimal setup. And it's amazing that all these tools exist. For me, coming kind of really new into this field relatively from industry and people who have been in it for a long time, I think it's amazing that it gives an opportunity for everyone to learn. So my biggest takeaway, Remix is fun. This was so much fun to make. It was not the biggest app, but it was really just a good experience. And then it led to a great experience in person with the event. Another takeaway is that Remix helps you build great apps. And that's true that I was able to get it up and going and really quickly. And then Remix helps you become a better developer. And what amazed me kind of as I was working on this is how much I was reading like MDN docs, as much as I was reading Remix docs, which were brand new because I was working on it the day that it was open source. There was so many things that I learned about how the web works in doing a lot of the things that I was working on with this app. And so it was a really great experience to build upon the growth that was coming. And I think for anyone that's coming into the developer community and is wanting a place to start to learn React and to learn these different web tools, it's a great place to start. And for people who are seasoned and further into their career, it's a great tool to build upon what they've done in the past, but really center it, and just it makes everyone become a better developer. So that was my experience with Remix and with this photo booth app, and it was, yeah, definitely a great time. So thank you, and I don't know if you do questions or not sure.
Well, let's not.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions on, yeah.
Who won the ugly sweater?
Oh, I'm pretty sure, and it was probably just for the picture. Well, I think this is a cat. I'm not totally sure. Zach might be watching, but the taco sweater, and then I think it was mainly for the picture, but the baby Yoda choking out someone, I think won. I think that was the number one for creativity more than anything. Yes.
Do you have any idea how many hours that took you?
I would say.
I'm going to repeat the question so people online can hear.
Oh yeah. So the question was how many hours it took me. I would say 5 hours. 5 to 6 hours.
That would have taken me like 12 or 30.
Well, and I was building up a lot of kind of. I had just done the other tutorial and used a little bit, but yeah, it was pretty quick. I would say the biggest things was figuring out how to integrate with the other APIs like Cloudinary, and doing a little bit with kind of diving a little bit more into the cookie storage. Took a little bit longer to kind of solidify that understanding, but yeah, cool, it was fun.
This is a comment, not a question. Because we're compiling that stuff with React, your email that you send actually use React to render that email. So you could bring in React DOM server .render to static markup and then send that to your email.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Just to repeat it for online, it's Ryan, right?
Yeah.
For this part right here is what you're talking about, instead of just doing HTML.
Yeah, right there. That could be JSX.
This right here could be JSX.
Yeah, and you would just call React
Which
DOM
would be
server render to static markup on it.
Much easier to get it looking nicely instead of just like, I'm just gonna throw something on there.
You can use components and you can use abstraction, like, anyway.
Yeah, and I think Tailwind was awesome to get the styling just up and going in an easy way. Tailwind has been, that was really easy to integrate with Remix, and now there's even an easier way that you guys put on the docs. That's just a couple of lines to get it set up. Because when I started it, then there was nothing online quite yet on how to get it going, but now it's really quick and easy.
It's really easy now.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Don't let that be your last meetup talk, Noah.
Okay.
That was great. Okay, let me just put this somewhere. Okay, hopefully y'all can hear that. Sweet, let me share my screen then. Okay. Let's see, here we go. Oh, actually, you know what? I need this. Okay, so a few weeks ago, I was part of a really cool initiative that Aaron Trost, I can't remember, I don't know how to say his last name. He was doing this all day live stream where he had a bunch of people come on and give talks on different things that were web focused. And it was a charity to raise money for Team Seas. So a bunch of sponsors matched donations and stuff. He raised $10,000 for Team Seas, which was sweet. And so I was just thought I'd give that talk to you all because I think that it's useful and interesting and important. So that's I say that just to explain why we've got this Forum Seas thing. So this is a simple app to commit yourself to donate to Team Seas. That's what this app does. And to do that, any mutations that you do, you use a form. That's the way we've always done this in the web. You have a form, you have some inputs, you submit those and all of that. Before we get into that though, I want to go to this reproduction of this form that is client only. Oh, you don't see when I zoom in, do you? Bummer. So we're on the /client only. So anybody who's been learning, like who just got into web dev in the last like 6 years, probably learned how to build forms kind of like this, at least in some way similar to this. So you do have a form, but your form has an onSubmit handler. And that submit handler, the first thing that it does is event.prevent default. Like so many of us who've joined the web dev community in the last 6 years, this is how you do forms. Just prevent default. Who knows why? That's what we do. And then the next like 30 lines or whatever is basically writing yourself what the form does automatically. So what you prevent it from doing its job and then you do its job manually. That's basically what we're doing here. But in any case, like you end up doing a fetch and of course, like who cares about race conditions? But this actually works. So I've got this working, and if I can say, Kent, I'm gonna submit myself in here, that will do the fetch request and it will load up the user or the people who have committed and all that. So this works, but there are a couple of unfortunate problems with this that we'll talk about here in a little bit that differs from what we have when we're using the form API as it is in the web, the way that the web works. So I'm going to come over here to our regular commitments here. I'm going to use this lowercase form here really quick. And actually, we'll change all that. So let's talk about what a form does by default, the default behavior of a form. So in this one, I don't have an onSubmit handler. We're not preventing default. So what does the form do? Here I'm going to say Cody, and you'll notice, oh, okay, I'm zooming on my screen, but you don't see that. Thanks, Zoom. Right up here, we have a query string in the URL all of a sudden. Something else that you may not have noticed, so I'll do this again. When I hit this submit button, it actually does a full page refresh as well. So what it's doing, what the browser does by default with a form, is it will take the inputs of that form, it will serialize them into a query string, and then it will navigate the browser to the current URL with that query string of all the serialized values of the form. So that's the default behavior of the form. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, yes, of course, that's why we prevent default, because I don't want a full page refresh and I don't want to stick everything in the URL. Well, luckily for us, we can actually change the method to post. So that's why we don't have everything in the URL. So we can take that off, and now I can say that, and interestingly, it worked. We'll talk about that here in a second. But what's going on here now? Oh yeah, I can't zoom in. Sorry, let me bump this up a little bit. Now, instead of a GET request with the form value serialized in the URL string, it is a POST request, and the value of the form is put into the payload, encoded as, let's see if we can find the content encoding. Yeah, here it is, content type. It's the XW, I don't know why. Why is it so complicated, Ryan? Why do they say X-www? Like, can't it just be like application form? I don't know.
I'm only in charge of remix.
Yeah, URL encoded, I don't know. I guess it is encoded as URL, I suppose that means.
Probably has something to do with Netscape and Microsoft fighting
Yeah.
25 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, the browser, this is the thing I want you to take away from this. The browser knows how to do forms. Before we had all of our fun, cool JavaScript stuff that we do now, the web supported mutations. Like we could mutate even before we had JavaScript stuff. And because of the nature of the, don't break the web, all of that stuff still works. And so we don't have to have this, let's prevent the default, and then spend the next bunch of lines writing a worse version of what the browser would do for us. We can actually build on top of what the web does provide. Now, again, we are doing a full page refresh here, and that has negative implications from a mostly accessibility standpoint. So like your focus management is like no good, but also it's not as fast. So like doing a full page refresh isn't as fast as just doing a simple fetch request. So like, wouldn't it be cool if we could have both? Like maybe we can leverage the way that forms work just as they are, but also not have to do the full page refresh. And so that's what Remix's capital form component does, is when you use the capital form component, it does do an event prevent default, and it does serialize the form. So it's doing that stuff manually, so it can do a fetch request. So the reason that that's useful, again, is so we don't do a full page refresh. Now, why does all this matter? Like, shouldn't it just be enough to say Remix can do forms? Like that should be enough. The reason I think that this is so cool, that Remix, well, actually, let me take a step back and establish Remix will work either way. If you use a lowercase form, Remix understands how browsers submit forms. And if you're using the uppercase form, then Remix will send a fetch request instead, and the server side will understand that as well. And so Remix normalizes that whether or not the JavaScript is submitting it or the browser's submitting it itself. And I suppose I should also show that sometimes I forget that like people listening, this might be your first exposure to Remix. So this is pretty cool. We have this action function, and this runs on the server. So you've got your form that runs in the browser that makes a post request in our case, and that's going to be handled by the action here, which I think is really cool. That here's your form, and you scroll up, and here's the server side code that handles the form. That's neat. So anyway, here we grab the form data off of the request. We can get the committer. We can do some validation here. This is all happening server side. We can hit our database directly, or we can hit downstream APIs or whatever integrations we're doing. And then we can send a response or redirect or whatever we want to do. So anyway, that's how all of this flows. And this will work whether or not you're using the Remix form component. So it'll work with the regular form, the way the browser submits it just by default, and it will work with the fetch request that Remix will do. So why does it matter that Remix understands how forms work just in the browser? The reason that it matters, or at least the thing that I think is really awesome about this, is it enables your application to work before the JavaScript is finished loading and before the app has hydrated. So I actually literally just, when I was in London last, I was on a train and I was loading an app. I just went to a URL and I saw the white screen, And then I lost connection. And so I was just sitting there with a white screen and nothing was useful at all. Well, actually I had a loading spinner, but I lost connection. And so like all the data that was loading, everything was not working. And so there are lots of situations where you either don't have the JavaScript fails to load, or it's taking a long time to load, whatever it is. And so what is really cool about this is how this behaves when the JavaScript takes a long time to load. So let's simulate that here by saying we're on a slow 3G network. So if I'm on a slow 3G network and I show up on this page for the first time, so there's no cache going on in here, I'm loading this document, and as soon as it loads the document, I can now say Hannah, and I hit enter and I submit. My JavaScript hasn't actually finished loading by the time I've submitted this form. So I got the document, it was all server rendered, it's all there. I can actually use my app before the JavaScript finishes loading, because Remix understands what to do with this post request. To me, that's really cool, because it has a lot of really cool implications, because for one, like the use case of, oh, I'm on a slow network, and so the JavaScript takes a long time to load and hydrate my app. But also because like from the performance standpoint of being able to actually use the app. So like a lot of times we'll talk about performance of a web application when we're thinking about time to first byte. That's like a huge metric that people are always talking about, like how fast can your server send a byte response back to the user? And that's great, but that's only one element of the user experience. What the user actually cares about is they don't care about bytes. Who cares about what's a byte? I'll have a byte of Costa Vida. The user doesn't care about bytes. The user cares about being able to use your app, right? They're a user. They want to use your app. And so what I think is more important is time to interactivity. And so what's cool is that when you server render, you can send all of your data or all like the whole document. And that's great. But if you're relying on the JavaScript for your forms to actually work, then you sent the user a bunch of stuff and they can look at it, but they can't actually start using it until the JavaScript is finished loading and hydrated. And so the fact that Remix will work whether or not the JavaScript is finished loading or hydrated yet, I think is really cool, because it means that users who are on a slow connection, as soon as they get that document, they can start interacting with and using your application. So, and most everything can be represented in a form. You've got a delete button for like, you've got a list of items, you have delete buttons on all of those. Those can be within a form, and the user can start using that before the JavaScript is finished loading. So this, one other aspect of this that's really cool is for the last, I don't know, like 5 years or so, frameworks have been really trying to cut down on how much JavaScript they send to the browser, because that's always like, you send less stuff and so your app will be faster, right? With this sort of an experience, that actually matters a little less. I mean, it's still important. You don't want to send like just a ton of JavaScript and whatever necessarily. I mean, the fact that we have JavaScript is good. Like again, there's a reason we're saying prevent default making a fetch request. You have a better user experience when you do have the JavaScript, but the ability for the user to actually start interacting with your website before the JavaScript is finished loading means that the amount of JavaScript you send has not as big of an impact on the user experience as it did before. Because with our client only form, if I'm going over here and we get that refresh, all this stuff here, let's try this again. So we're still on a slow 3G network, and I come over here and I'm like, yo, that's not going to work because I don't have the JavaScript yet. So anyway, that's like the biggest thing. I just think that it's really cool that we can make that the JavaScript actually is progressively enhancing your app rather than being required for your app to work. That's the big distinction here, is that because Remix understands forms as they were always intended to work, as well as the progressively enhanced, like event prevent default and do a fetch request, you can have your cake and eat it too. So yeah, that's the power of forms. Forms are awesome. They've always been awesome. And now we finally have a framework that allows us to take advantage of those forms as they've always been, as well as progressively enhance them so that you can have better error messages and optimistic UI, focus management, all of that really awesome stuff that we know and love from modern web stuff. And this is why why Remix is called Remix. We're taking the old stuff and the new stuff, remixing them together to make something that's better than either one of them by themselves. Yeah, I'm done. So yeah.
Oh, I might have missed it. Did you show the network tab when you use capital F form? I think you only showed
oh yeah, you're right.
resilient part of it, but not the actual.
Yeah, so now the JavaScript has loaded here. We'll just do full page refresh here. Okay, so we'll get rid of all this stuff. And now when I do, Ryan, you're committed now. So we're gonna do a fetch request that will have the payload. It is still URL encoded. This is some special stuff that Remix is doing to make it so that Remix on the back end knows where to send this data here to the action that we're going to. But yeah, was there something specific you wanted?
Yeah, do you want to hit the X next to headers? So Remix makes a post with fetch instead of a full document now, right?
Yeah.
And then the second request, it revalidates
Oh,
any
right,
data
yeah.
on the page automatically.
Yeah. So if we're thinking about like before we had the JavaScript stuff, when you would do like the regular form full page refresh post thing, you're automatically getting like everything on the page. So you make the post and then the server sends back the new document. And so everything on the page is up to date with the mutation that you made. So Remix does the same thing. It says, hey, you made a mutation, all bets are off. I don't know like whether any of this stuff on the page is current. And so I'm going to re-request all of the loaders on the page. So all the data for everything on the page.
And that's why you don't have a state variable that you push those names into.
Yeah. So here, we'll look at the code here really quick. You've got your commitments, we're mapping over those. And if we just come up here, oh yeah, and I've actually got some optimistic UI in here. I forgot to mention, it's awesome. But yeah, no use state. It's all just this use loader data. And Remix takes care of keeping that state up to date. And what's cool about this too is if I were to submit a bunch really fast, yeah, must be provided. Well, I should slow down my network, but Remix will, as it's making this update to say, hey, go give me the latest of this data. If I submit another one before that one's done, then Remix will manage canceling that request.
Slow it down, do that.
Yeah, we can do
Watch
it.
them all get canceled.
And I'm gonna, okay, everybody's lost their commitments. Here, no throttling and now throttling. Okay, sweet. So we come over here.
You want to clear out the network tab first?
Yeah. So boom, 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 boom. See all those cancellations because it's like, oh, all bets are off. Well, actually, I think it canceled the post request because I hit it way too fast. So let's do.
Well, to navigate anyway. Yeah. That's still fine though, because we ended up with
the correct stuff.
data in there. So it's
Yeah.
always revalidating. With
Yeah, it always manages that those race conditions for us, which is really sweet. That is really cool. Yeah, one thing that I just really love about Remix is how little I think about state. Like when I first started with Remix, I was like, oh snap, I'm not thinking about caching. I'm not thinking about managing my client-side cache of my server-side data. Remix just always makes sure that it's exactly what it should be when it should be updated. So I like that a lot. Sweet. Any other questions? Yeah.
Utah.js, you talked a little bit, I missed it, how it worked, where there's like the typical e-commerce form where you submit something to buy something and it's like, don't click on this again or you might buy it twice. And you said that Remix does something to make that.
Not anymore.
Oh, not anymore? Okay.
Yeah, it used to, because so the action earlier, Remix used to require that you would always redirect from an action. So let's take a step back. The reason that happens is if we do like a regular, oh yeah, I have the regular form. Oh, maybe that's why some of this was working. So if we do, hold on a second. Is that right? Oh, I'm on the client only. Here we go. Yeah, that's why stuff got messed. All right, so if I'm on a regular form and I go, yo, so I'm doing a full page refresh and I'm doing this navigation. And if you don't do this redirect, which I am doing, so if you don't do this redirect, then that navigation is part of the history stack. So you hit the back button and it says, oh, okay, I need to do what we did the last time on that last place in the history stack. Most of the time for us, that's just a GET request. So I need to do that GET request again. But because you did a full page refresh with this post request, the browser's like, oh, okay, I need to do the same thing I did last time. Let me submit that form again and do that same post request. Otherwise, it's not the same request, right? So it's not exactly going back as it would be. And so that ended up, and this is a decision that was made by browsers years and years ago, which I think is the right decision. Unfortunately, that means that you're resubmitting that form. So like you bought something and you decide you want to go back. And so you buy it again because you do that same post request. So that became such a problem that browsers implemented this safety net to say, confirm resubmission because people were sick of buying too many teddy bears or something. And so, yeah, and so that's why we have that. You'll get that on your bank website or your airlines and stuff. It's super annoying, and they say don't hit the back button. So it's actually really simple to solve this problem. If you do a redirect, then that post doesn't get put into the history stack. And so for that reason, when Action was first introduced, Remix said you always have to redirect unless you are returning errors. So if you've got errors, then we're not actually going to complete the navigation anyway, and so it won't end up on the history stack.
Even so, back then, no matter what, you had to redirect because we were
trying. Oh, even for errors, yeah, that's right.
We were trying to fix that problem, and so it was annoying because now if you had validation errors, you never even booked the flight or charged their card. They just had validation errors, so everything had to go through sessions. Yeah, which is how we used to do it like years ago, and that's fine. But sessions are a lot harder, so we got rid of that. So you can just return data from your action if you got validation issues. It's basically a best practice. Validate the form. If there are problems, send the errors, display them on the form. If it's valid, charge the thing and then redirect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So remember, in your actions, you're either returning errors or redirecting, and you will avoid these problems. Sweet. Did that answer your question? Cool. Other questions? Okay, that was fun. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, we're cool to hang out here. I don't even see Chris, so we can just hang out forever.
That's what I want to do.
Yeah, that's what
all night.
Yeah, we'll get the disco ball. No, but yeah, feel free to hang out until they kick us out. And again, next month, it's always the first Tuesday of the month. So let's see when that is specific. I think it's like the 2nd or 3rd of next month. 3rd. Oh, Thursday. Today's Thursday. And again, if you want to speak, or let me say that differently. Could you please speak? Because it is so much more fun if you are the one speaking. So yeah, even if you don't want to speak, you'll know it was good. It was cool.
Yeah,
it's fun. All right. So it's actually pretty fun to speak. So yeah, and you can come talk to me and be like, I'm not sure like what I want to talk about. You can literally go to the Remix repo right now and open up any of the examples, and you can give a talk about any one of these things. So yeah, any of these things would be cool to give a little talk about. But yeah, even cooler if it's like an actual thing that you've been working on and stuff with Remix. Yeah, and that's it. So I'm going to turn off the live stream. Bye, internet friends, and